Good day, folks, and thank you so much for checking out the Sportsline podcast on CHCH. I'm Bubba O'Neil. Folks, I'm always amazed that despite the sport, the level of the sport, even the gender, fans have their opinions. Now, sharing those thoughts can make sports fans laugh, angry, or just maybe bring them together. Now, regardless, we love the water cooler conversation at Sportsline, and that's why it's the perfect time for Square-Off. Stepping into the ring as a broadcaster whose voice is no stranger to the Golden Horseshoe. To borrow the phrase, hardest working man in the business is extremely accurate for this McMaster grad. That is a high school teacher by day, and at night he's doing play-by-play for the likes of the Niagara Ice Dogs, the McMaster men or women's basketball teams, MAC football, and most recently, he was sounding brilliant on the microphone on the U Sports Women's Volleyball Nationals. Steve Clark, you were a guest back in February, but you recently reached out and said, I got to be on Square-Off, Bubs. I got to be there. So we have you here.
Thank you very much. And the reason I reached out, I was listening to the episode you did with Louie. Yeah. Louie Butko. And I thought, man, I loved when you did the Square-Off with Hebsy, and I loved like when it was, with PTI. And I thought, man, it would be so cool to come in here and just fire off some opinions about sports. So I reached out, and you didn't block me, and here I am.
And that's what's outstanding about this, because it is what we do here as sports fans. I don't care where you live, what you do. Like I said, the matter of the sports, there are going to be opinions shared and opinions of differences. But I think that's the great part about it, is breaking it down, the armchair quarterback aspect of sports.
Yeah, and it is. It's almost like if you're sitting in a bar and you're having, a beer and you're watching a game, and almost always a debate comes up. So you sit there and you start talking. And when it happens on social media, people get really mad at each other and block each other. But if it's happening in like a formal or a public setting, you're fine with it. Yeah. You sit there, you have your debate, he has his say, she has their say, et cetera, and then you clink glasses and you move on to the next. Yeah, it's the beauty of it.
And that's what we're going to do. But before we do that, a couple of things I do want to run by here. Most recently, I did talk about the U Sports Women's Volleyball Championships, which you were on the microphone for. McMaster with the 5th place finish, which they were really happy about. Tell me a little bit about that event. It looked like it was a lot of fun.
It was a tremendous success. I think a lot of people were surprised that when McMaster wasn't playing, and then when McMaster got eliminated, there was a thought that the crowds would kind of dip and that the emotion and the noise level would dip. That was not the case at all. A lot of the teams traveled well. Brock traveled well. Acadia traveled well. UBC, Alberta, they all brought fans, and that made the atmosphere great. And people stuck around to watch. And McMaster, you know what? They got the toughest draw of all. They got UBC, the defending champs, the number 2 seed, and McMaster played a fantastic game and took them to 4 sets. And in the 3rd set, pivotal, McMaster had like a 4 or 5 point lead, and then the narrative got flipped. UBC took over, and then they basically went from there. They kind of blew through the tournament and beat a pretty good Alberta team in the final. So again, people will look and go, oh, it's Canada West winning volleyball again. But when you look at the totality of volleyball that weekend and the crowds and the atmosphere and what McMaster did, it was fantastic.
And I thought the fun part in the consolation round was you got that rematch from the OUA final, and that's what we want here in the Golden Horseshoe.
Yeah, and Brock was in tough. They'd lost a heartbreaker the night before in 5 sets. It was a little bit of an upset. They'd lost one of their top players late in that game who didn't play in the game against McMaster. So I think there was an emotional kind of disconnect with Brock, which is understandable considering they played the last game of the night, then they got to come back and play against McMaster. And McMaster had a little bit of distance from their game and were able to, as I said, use that hometown crowd and played really, really well as they did all weekend long, and they took down Brock, which was, again, it's great for OUA basketball to see 2 teams of that magnitude playing again.
Well, it was great actually turning on, I guess, CBC Gem and listening to you and just watching the action. And as I said, the atmosphere at the Birds Gymnasium, really unbelievable. So credit to all the people, the organizers that put that together. Obviously, we covered it here at CHCH as well, too. Brianne Foley was down there on the weekend. It was a wonderful event. And as a national event, I always say, this is the way it's supposed to be, for crying out loud. Hey, hockey for you as well, too. I mean, you spend a lot of time at the Meridian Center. I guess games got a little tough for you. I guess second to last in, overall in the OUA, in the OHL for the Niagara Ice Dogs, second last overall. Where do they go from now? We're here.
Well, bad luck again when it came to the lottery system and the draft. They had in the weighted lottery system, because they finished dead last in the OHL, they had a 40% chance of getting the first pick. Then it declined by 10% for the next three teams after: Windsor, Peterborough, and Sarnia. And of course, Niagara's luck. They go from first to fourth. And there's three really, really good forwards. There's Ethan Belches, who plays for Oakville, Brady Wasselin, who the Ice Dogs I know are very, very high on, and Adam Valentini. Three dynamite forwards. If those three go, it becomes a little bit more of a crapshoot, and not because of the talent, but because a couple of the players have made commitments elsewhere. So then a team that drafts them have to work a lot harder to get them to commit. So number 4 is still a very, very good pick for the Niagara Ice Dogs. They've got a very good foundation with some of the 16-year-olds that develop well. I mean, Ryan Robrek almost scored 30 goals as a 16-year-old. He was voted the second best shot in the Ontario Hockey League's Eastern Conference by the coaches. So he's got a bright future. You add in Kevin you add in, who will get drafted by an NHL team, Ivan Gallianoff, a 16-year-old who played very, very well, Artem Frolov, a defenseman, Urban Podrakar, an import. The goaltending looks strong. So there's a foundation there for improvement, but it all depends on what they're able to draft and develop and what they do with the offseason, and not go crazy with the trades, make smart, necessary trades.
And there's stability finally in the front office and behind the bench.
Yes. I had a chance to meet and chat with Ben Boudreau, and he sounded very confident in that he's got a long-term contract. He's got a vision. He wasn't afraid to be very, very vocal at times during the second part of the season, and that's the confidence of a coach that does have tenure and does have some rope in front of them. With Bruce Boudreau as the senior advisor, I think that's a calming process too. So I think those two elements do make things a little bit more stable, but as you can see, the Ice Dogs unafraid to make trades, and I think that's a great thing to be, but you've got to address the needs on your team, and for the Ice Dogs, it's definitely going to be on their defense.
Yeah, we've got to get that rivalry all steamed up again. I don't care if Brantford, the Bulldogs are in Brantford or Hamilton, but seeing the domination of the Bulldogs over the Ice Dogs just doesn't seem right. I like the back and forth that what we saw, about a decade ago, and we got to get that rivalry all finished up. Hey, the Bulldogs in the playoffs right now, first round, down 2-1 to the 67s right now. I think there were a lot of people that were flipping coins for this series, and Brantford came out hot in game number 1, but I'll tell you, the 67s in game number 3, first game of the nation's capital, boy, they look sharp. Yeah,
they really pushed back in game 2 in Brantford, and then game 3 in Ottawa. It's a Dave Cameron team. You know they're going to be structured. You know that they're going to be organized. You know that the talent is going to get a chance to be on display, and all of those things have happened. I had questions about their goaltending with Colin McKenzie. So far, it has not been a concern. And, it's a pivotal game 4 tonight. You hate to sound cliche. If Ottawa wins, then it's 3-1. But if Brantford wins, then it's 2-2. And anything goes back game 5 in Brantford. And what an atmosphere that will be. I had Ottawa in 7, but you're right. I could have woken up the next day and gone Brantford in 6. It was that close.
Do you got a winner for overall?
Boy, that is a great question. I keep coming back to London. I really keep coming back to London. Saginaw has all the talent. They loaded up the Memorial Cup hosts. But I look at what London has done. They were reeling off 21 game point streaks during the season. They swept away Flint, who weren't a bad team down the stretch. They've got Easton Cowan, who has been on a monumental point streak. I think he scored all points in all 4 playoff games as well. And that was after, I think, a 36-game point streak or something like that to close out the regular season. I just think they have all the elements in place to just get past Saginaw or the Sioux, who are to me the other top 2 contenders. But Dale and Mark Hunter, again, they've done a great job with that team.
I think we've found, or at least if you're a Maple Leaf fan, Easton Cowan, he could be the prospect that they don't trade away.
I don't want him to. No, and you're absolutely right. He had a great camp at the Leafs, too. He was around camp for a long period of time. Yeah, an exhibition. They're very, very high on this young man, and he proved it in the OHL this season. And when it comes to the Leafs, right, and they're looking at, we got to add a veteran here, a veteran there. Well, Easton Cowan, he's going to be our trade bait. I really hope they don't trade him. I really think he's got a chance to be a special player and one of the steals of the draft.
Ready to square off?
I'm ready to square off.
Let's do it. And let's stick with the Toronto Maple Leafs, folks. And Austin Matthews, he's now scored 63 goals, 7 games left in the regular season. The big question around Hogtown, should the Leafs favor rest for their big gunner or allow him to continue that record and try for 70 goals?
I've never been a fan, Bubba, of resting players. I've never been a fan if a team has clinched of resting players. I think athletes are so attuned to routine and things like that to go into that playoffs with momentum. I think they keep him in the lineup. Now, if he gets 65 and there's like 2 games left, then yeah, maybe you rest him for 1. But as long as he's got a shot, I think you've got to give him the opportunity to get that 70-goal plateau. It would be such an accomplishment for Austin Matthews. He's had such a special year that you just want him to continue on that. The way he's played this year, he's been very, very smart. And all those questions about potential injuries early in his career have completely disappeared. I say play him, and if he's close, and even if the game doesn't mean anything, if he's got 68 in the last game of the season, I would play him.
You know, and you're right. There's a lot of fan talk. There's actually seemingly a buzz in the Leafs locker room for him to get 70 goals. But I'll tell you this. What's the award for getting 70 goals? Like, there's no award. Like, there's no award. Now, I think the Leafs have been pressed a little bit here because there's seemingly an opportunity to maybe catch the slumping Florida Panthers and go for home ice advantage in the first round. I can say, okay, yeah, let's go hard for that. But if there, as you said, if there's 2 or 3 games, even 4, and it's not in question, you sit him. You sit John Tavares. Mitch Marner, maybe you give him a couple of games to get back acclimated after that high ankle sprain, and you got to decide on a goaltender as well, too. So, you know what? Those big gunners, they're going – well, you know this as well as anyone because you've called playoff hockey. This is different than the regular season. When a guy knows in a 7-game series, and when a guy knows you have an ouchie, they're going after the ouchie.
Yes.
You're seeing the same defenders, and Austin Matthews is going to be marked, and he's going to be defended very hard by either team that they see. He needs rest, and he has to be ready and physically ready for it because his playoff record and those big gunners like a Mitch Marner have not been very good over the years.
Now, when you add in the element of the Marners and the Tavareses and the Morgan Rileys, especially a couple of those getting banged up, John Tavares now a little bit more of a veteran player, even Nylander, I would agree, maybe a little bit of rest. Maybe you spot the minutes a little bit during the game, but I don't think you sit him altogether as long as he's got a shot at 70. It doesn't come around all the time. It doesn't come around. I mean,
he can do it next year.
He's the only player, though, or one of 9 players, to get 60 goals twice. So now he gets 70 this year, and you're right, he could get 70 next year, and how many players can say they've scored 70 twice? I'm of the element of keep playing him, and I probably cursed him by saying that, but you know what? It's square off, so that's what I'm saying.
The New York Rangers and New Jersey Devils opened Wednesday night's game with a line brawl, resulting in 8 ejections, like seconds into the contest, folks. Madison Square Garden was just going crazy. Now, I don't know about you, but it appears fighting, at least in the highlights, it's on the rise. Is this good for the National Hockey League? Well,
you know, that spectacle with the Rangers, the best shot, somebody had an overhead shot. And it was like the light show. And it was almost like the precursor. And so when it was 2 seconds in, it's like the lights went off and then all of a sudden they dropped their gloves. A couple of those big boys with Rempe and Curtis McDermott, that was a spectacle. Not a fan of stage fighting. Overall, I'm a fan of players policing the game themselves. So I can't say I'm a huge fan of the stage fighting, and obviously I think we saw some stage fighting with the Rangers and Devils, but then you see now Ryan Reeves and how effective he has been. He scored a couple goals. He's being that rambunctious player that everybody thought that they were getting, and now people are saying, hey, he's going to be in the lineup in Game 1, and I think that's a good thing. He's had a couple of great tilts himself, and I'm okay with the fighting, just not the stage stuff.
But isn't this what we're trying to get out of the game? Like, isn't this there's a sort of reputation that, you know, that hockey had many years ago that is I thought slowly dissipating from the game, more leaning on the skill and the toughness. I get that. There's a toughness element. I think that there isn't really enforcers any longer, but yet, I don't know. Like, why are we so excited about watching a guy punch a plastic helmet? I don't get it.
Well, I mean, all you had to do was look at Madison Square Garden, and you saw how crazy that crowd was, and the crowd does still get up when there is a fight. So I'm defending it in the spirit of the game and in the progression of a game.
But it's not allowed in any other sport. It's not. Why is it natural?
This debate for years and years. But natural in that you bump some guy, you nail some guy, and boom, you drop the gloves, you go at it. Now, again, I get obviously the other side of it, the long-term health concerns, but I'm a little bit more of a, and I hate, that was terrible what I just said, by the way, that I just dismiss long-term health concerns, but I am a little bit of an older school guy. I'm not looking for, the Bloody Sunday, the Easter Massacre, whatever it was, Montreal and Quebec happening on a regular basis, but if it's a part of policing the game and it's in moderation, I'm fine with it.
Isn't that what referees are for?
That's a whole other conversation altogether about officiating.
Just asking.
But I agree. But I think there's certain things that the players kind of police themselves. Some of that under the radar stuff that happens, and I think if you have that sort of balance between the referees and the players on the ice, and if you have an effective player, Matt Rempe is an effective player. He's been asked to fight a lot, and I'm not a huge fan of that because I think a lot of it is staged.
He doesn't seem to be turning any. He wants to fight.
Yeah, he does. Ryan Reeves can be an effective player in short bursts.
Well, we'll see if he even makes the playoff roster to see if he's an effective player or not. But that again, we'll see what happens in a couple of weeks. Okay, here we go. Get ready for this, folks. The Blue Jays are the first team in Major League Baseball history to be no hit and one hit in the first 7 games of the regular season. It appears to me that general manager, if you take a look on social media, and I know it's social media, Ross Atkins is being destroyed. Is it fair that he gets this type of criticism from fans and baseball fans alike?
Well, fans are allowed to express their opinion, and fans are allowed to be vocal. They're allowed to be vocal on social media, and I think this all stems back from last year when it was perceived that managerial decisions were really being made by the GM and the president, and Ross Atkins might have been having a little bit too much of an opinion on the game, and they were scripting out the game as opposed to managing the game. But I also think it goes back to the year before and the year before in those 3-game series that the Blue Jays have not won a playoff game, I believe, since 2016 with this regime. They blew that big lead against Seattle 2 years ago. That left a bad taste. They took out Jose Barrios when he was mowing down the Minnesota Twins. That left a really, really bad taste. And then they didn't make any improvements, and I don't know what's beyond a bad taste, a sour taste, a disgraceful taste, a disgusting taste. That's exactly what the Blue Jays fans are feeling right now. Now, can I present a balance?
Let's hear it.
You're 7 games in. Your hitting is terrible. Davis Schneider at 8 at-bats is leading your team in home runs and is tied in RBIs.
Okay.
Bichette, Guerrero, and Springer have a home run and 4 RBIs between them. But those guys are going to get on track. Your pitching is going to
So this is it's early talk.
Yes, it's early.
Well, hold on. Every game matters because when the Jays miss the playoffs by a game or 2, we're going to look back at those first 7 games or so and say, oh, it didn't matter. It was just early, right?
No, they matter, but it's not like it's the NFL or the CFL in which you're halfway through. It's Labor Day and you're 2-7 and have to scramble the rest of the way. You've got 55 or so more games left. Guerrero will get on track. Bichette will hit better. Springer will hit better. And you have to remember, Kevin Gausman is just rounding into form. He only threw 4 innings in his first start. The back end of your bullpen with Eric Swanson and Jordan Romano hasn't even played yet this year. So those guys, assuming the Jays score some runs and get a lead, they'll be back as well. Is it time for panic mode? No. Are the fans, though, in their right mind to be all over Ross Atkins? 1,000% yes.
Well, it'll be real fun when they go into the Bronx this weekend for 3 against the Yankees. Everyone said, the Yankees. On the flip side, everyone's, the Yankees, they're no good. Well, they're 6-1. And if you're supposed to be no good and you're 6-1, I'll take that all day long. I get pitching things. I mean, okay, the offense is just stunk for the Blue Jays, but there's a couple other things that I'm a little concerned about. Barrios has been solid, I think, and I think we expected that. But I get Bassett, the guy who won 16 games last year. What's his ERA after 2 games? And he's given up bombs all over the place too. It was rough against Yordan Alvarez when he faced him earlier this week. I don't get it. Bichette, 3 errors in 5 games played. Who's the third baseman? I've been saying this and I'm not the only one. I mean, Isaiah Kiner Falefa, nice player, nice utility guy, nice guy to have around. Justin Turner, he's 40 years old. Is he going to be playing third? I mean, are you just going to have it back and forth? I thought you need consistency in baseball. You got to have a guy on the hot corner that's one of your guys.
Well, it worked darn it in the 80s when the Blue Jays had Rance Mulliniks and Garth Orich platooning. But you're right, it's spin the wheel for third base. And there are concerns, bottom end of the rotation. Kikuchi did not have a great start. Bowden Francis, I got really nervous when he was named as a starter. He gives up 3 bombs in his only start. And then Bassett. Bassett is one of those guys. He's not overpowering. He's a spot pitcher. He's got to keep batters off balance, and the batters are perfectly calibrated and perfectly balanced against Chris Bassett early so far this year.
It's early, guys. It's early.
155 games left.
Raptors. It's not early for the Raptors right now. Last night, they lost by a franchise record 48 points to the Timberwolves. It is the Raptors' 15th consecutive loss, one away from a team record at least. First of all, there are questions about Masai Ujiri. Is a rebuild in sight? And as it seems to me right now, this team is slipping into, and I'm not just talking about the NBA, I'm talking about local sports oblivion. Does this concern you?
No, I don't think it concerns me as much. I mean, their play on the court is dreadful. They lost by 48 points to Minnesota last night, but they only played 7 players. R.J. Barrett didn't play. Kelly Olynyk didn't play. So Grady Dick is getting meaningful time. That's a good thing, but I think there is a foundation of potential there. Scotty Barnes also didn't play, is there. So you've got some pieces there with R.J. Barrett that I think you can sell a little bit of the sizzle. This is not the only low point for the Raptors this year, though. I thought their low point was when it was the Detroit Pistons who broke their 9-game losing streak against the Raptors. And then, insult to injury, the Pistons lose last night, and Malachi Flynn goes off for 50.
The guy, the Raptors, 50. They gave him away for crying out loud.
So, what they used to say about the old Chicago Blackhawks in the 80s, it was, the Chicago stadium is packed, but those are the only hockey fans in Chicago. And I think it's getting that way for the Raptors. The crowds look good. They'll still get decent TV ratings, but when you look, they might be the only hardcore fans that the Raptors have right now because they are slipping, because this 15-game losing streak, they are on like a death march down the stretch, and it doesn't look like there's any end in sight. I know Minnesota's a good team, but you're losing by 48 points to that team, and that at any stretch is embarrassing. They gave up 80 points in the first half against the Knicks a couple of weeks ago, and that was embarrassing. But high draft pick, couple young pieces. Hopefully you wipe off the stench of this season and kind of start fresh again and see what happens. But I don't think that they're going into the irrelevancy. But at the same time, though, it's a fan base that is asking a lot of questions.
It's crazy, eh? On one particular evening, the Leafs lose 4-1 in a game where, people are saying, hey, Tampa's playing well. This is kind of a test for the Leafs right now. They other than Austin Matthews scoring 63, Vasilevsky had them. And then the Blue Jays, they get whitewashed in an 8-0 loss. And then the Raptors lose by 48. In a matter of one night, Toronto sports fans, Southern Ontario sports fans, they're fire him, fire the coach. It was just a hopeless night for Toronto and Southern Ontario sports fans all in one night.
I do think with Masai Ujiri, though, to get back to the Raptors.
Do you still trust him, Masai?
Listen, I just think now it might be time for him to move to his next challenge.
Oh!
And I honestly feel... I guess it means I don't believe in Masai. I just think now it's time for a new voice in there, that Masai, it's kind of run its course. He's been there for 8 or 9 years. They've had a tremendous amount of success. I'm not convinced he is the type of personality and general manager to be part of a rebuild like the Raptors have. Maybe there's somebody else in there. And it's no disrespect to Masai Ujiri. I also think there's a higher profile calling for Masai, whether it's in the NBA or just in basketball as a whole, too. So maybe it's time he's outgrown the Raptors, might be the way that I could put it.
Well, Keith Pelley, the new CEO of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, might be something that some of the chairmen might be saying to him. This is interesting times for the Raptors. Hey, Vince Carter elected to the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. You know, with the rocky relationship he's had with fans here in Toronto and Southern Ontario. In fact, the entire country of Canada, he left in such a suspect sort of ways. You know, like, should Raptor fans forgive and forget? You know, that 7th season in that trade was, that they got nothing for. Are we ready to move on and celebrate Vince Carter?
1,000% yes. I think it's time for the Raptors to celebrate Vince Carter, not only his on-court play, but the legacy he left and the generation of players that he influenced in the Toronto area. I'm not convinced you're getting R.J. Barrett and some of the other, or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or some of the other great players who are Canadian without them having Vince Carter as influences. And I think Vince Carter... Nobody captured the imagination outside of a Toronto Maple Leaf like a Doug Gilmour or a Wendell Clark. Nobody captured the imagination of the Toronto sports fan more than Vince Carter. He was electric. Everybody can pull up 2 dunks. The one he did in the NBA All-Star game in which he said, it's over. And then the one he did against France when he dunked it over the 7-foot French center, who I forgot as well. Those are 2 defining.
No one remembers
impacts.
him.
Yeah, and this Frederick Weiss. There, I did.
Oh, wow, you're good.
So that 7th year was awful. He was pouting. It was noticeable. He wasn't dunking, to excite the fans.
Told Barry
At
Davis.
one point, he told a player on the court the play that they were running. It was not a good ending. But now, I think Vince Carter's a much more mature individual. He played for a ton of teams after, but it all started in Toronto. So I think it's time for Toronto fans to forgive and to celebrate the legend and the legacy and the player.
Now, he's got to know that there's still this. I mean, hey, I'm not one of them. I agree with 100% of everything you said. Like, I totally do. But there's a guy that sat in your seat not all that long ago, right, that does not want that, right? There are other people like Tim Boland. I don't use him for example right now. And if he's watching right now, he is upset. Right? He said, I'll never forgive him. Right? And for all the things that you said and the fact that the Raptors got nothing for him. Everyone that they got, the 2 Williams, they were garbage. And then, right?
I know who you're going to say, Morning.
And then Morning said, I'm not going there. Like, and, if I was in South Beach too, I wouldn't go either to Toronto. But they got nothing for him. It was really a tough situation for a guy that made the headlines like he did. He missed a big shot in the series against Philadelphia. We can live with that, but it was the way he left Toronto that a lot of people will always be sour with. And I don't know. Another question is going to be once he goes to the Hall of Fame, and he's going to wear a Raptors jersey, folks. I mean, and Raptors hat. That's what he says. But maybe he should he apologize? I mean, he's got to know that people are kind of edgy with him. Should he maybe apologize a little bit? Maybe in his speech or something?
I think there could be an acknowledgement of that. I mean, you saw Joey Votto apologize to Canadian baseball a couple of weeks ago for some of the things that he said about Canadian baseball. And I think without outright saying, I'm sorry, during his speech, he could make an acknowledgement that the ending in Toronto wasn't what it was not clean. It was not smooth. It was not what anybody wanted. You talk about that trade. They got pennies on the dollar in that trade. And that was also partially Vince Carter's fault because he really held the Raptors' brain trust's feet to the fire, so they couldn't really get a return on him. So I don't think you can completely ignore it, but I do think it's time to celebrate the greatness and the more good rather than the sourness of the final season.
Speaking of sour endings, the Buffalo Bills have traded all-pro receiver Stefon Diggs to the up-and-coming Houston Texans for a second-round draft pick and are now without a true number 1 receiver. Good move or bad move, Clarkie?
Well, it depends on what perspective you want to look at it from. I'm split on this. When you look at it on the surface, I don't think it's a very good move at all. right? You could see there was a little bit of a disconnect with Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs towards the second half of the season. And Stefon Diggs is a body language player, and you could see it in his body language. That said, even without Stefon Diggs being 100%, the Bills were still very good and really, by all rights, came close to knocking off Kansas City and maybe should have knocked off Kansas City in the playoffs. So you really would like to think that they could have repaired the relationship and said, okay, let's give it one more go. Because by trading him to Houston, not only are you giving an up-and-coming team in your conference an extra weapon with an already excellent quarterback in C.J. Stroud, you're depleting your own team of a weapon. And also, Stefon Diggs still carries, I think, $30 million in dead cap money. So it's not the salary cap relief that a lot of people think. And quite frankly, I'm not sure who else is out there to possibly even start to replace the 100 balls that Stefon Diggs caught and the 1,400 yards or whatever it was. So on the whole, on the surface, I'm going to say it was a bad move because I do think you could have repaired that relationship in the offseason and started afresh again.
There's nothing more important than chemistry in the locker room in sports, and this has been a problem going on for more than a season, right? His brother tweeting, oh, you better get out of Buffalo. Clearly some conversation has been going on there, right? Stefon Diggs is now going to be 31 years old. Look at his contributions. Remember that the Bills were on the verge of not making the playoffs.
Yep.
And what happened? They ripped off 5 consecutive victories to close out the season to get that number 2 seed. And if you look at the statistical story of those 5 games, Stefon Diggs had nothing to do with it. There are games of 29 yards, 47 yards, 39 yards. The amount of drops that he had in those 5 games. Hey, 2 playoff games, 73 yards receiving in those 2 combined games. And let's not forget that big drop against Kansas City, which would have been a huge difference maker and maybe had them going to Baltimore for the AFC Championship. So sayonara there, buddy. Sayonara, number 14. I will always say this. If you look at his legacy, he was one of the major pieces that got the Bills into, I would call, elite category. There was definitely a nice thing going on between him and the quarterback. And the public displays of arguing with your quarterback. Like, is there anyone trying harder than that guy, than their quarterback? Like, I don't think so, right? So to me, Josh Allen's going to win this award, this sort of war every time with the fans and, of course, the front office as well, too. And you're right? Here's the thing. You're right. They're going to save $19 million in immediate cap space, but with the penalties, because you just traded away a guy that played 1 year on a 4-year contract extension, there are going to be, I think, $31 million in penalties. So, it's going to hurt them. The draft is apparently loaded full of wide receivers. The Bills' offense is a more run-oriented offense when they're at their best, and their 2 tight ends are fantastic. So, sayonara.
And Gabe Davis, big play day. Gabe also had his share of drops as well.
Yes,
last year.
And he's gone
too. So you're saying if the relationship, with all the reasons that you're saying, is irreparably damaged, and you don't think they could have got back on the same page, and at 31 years old, he could have been taken a step back slightly.
No, he'll have a great season with Houston.
But I'm talking if he stayed with Buffalo.
Yeah.
Right? Would he have? But if that relationship is irreparably damaged, then I could see why. But at the same time, though, I thought they could run it back and say one more time.
Here's the one team I'm going to throw out. I can't believe I'm using this as an example. Look like Kansas City Chiefs moved on pretty good without Tyreek.
They did.
Right? Yep. Can you name me 2 receivers on the Kansas City Chiefs right now?
I could name Hardman and
Mecole Hardman. How good is Mecole? He'll never be an All-Pro. He'll never go to a Pro Bowl game. Neither will Valdez-Scantling.
No.
Maybe it's about scheme a little bit and good execution at the quarterback position that'll win you the Super Bowl. We'll find out. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Paige Beckers, Juju Watkins. They have been unbelievable in the women's NCAA March Madness. Here's the thing that I need to know from you, is that when they get to the WNBA, will that popularity that they've generated to the highest levels we've ever seen for women's college basketball, but will it translate into the WNBA?
I honestly think it will. And normally it doesn't. You get that big, huge event that you had with the 12 million people watching Caitlin Clark and Angel Weiss going, head to head, and that controversial call at the end in which Weiss fouled out and Caitlin Clark was going off for, 9 3-pointers or something like that. That is a rivalry I feel you can bottle up and carry forward into the WNBA, even though traditionally it has been proven that the greats haven't translated as well to the WNBA in terms of buzz, but Caitlin Clark is such a special player. You can see, she went to go hug, I think Jason Sudeikis wanted to meet her after a game, and so she's running into the crowd to hug Jason Sudeikis. She's transcended the game, and I think Angel Weiss is right there as somebody, as a player who's 6'3", 20-odd points, 15 rebounds, and a fantastic personality as well. Bottle that up. Juju, what was the last?
Juju Watkins.
Juju Watkins. She could be the next. She's going to be the next Caitlin Clark. She scored over 27 points a game as a freshman and a guard who's over 6 feet tall. So she is Caitlin Clark in 2 to 3 years. But I think right now you've got something special with these two athletes, and you've got two people who can transcend women's basketball and transcend the actual on-court stuff and really be an influence on the game. Caitlin Clark has been just simply outstanding. She's got NCAA records all over the place, and Angel Weiss has, I think she was a transfer the last couple of years, but she's going to be right there. I think you keep that rivalry going. I think you generate some buzz, and I think you really, I hate to say, you push this rivalry and push these two great athletes, and then maybe you get that effect that hits some of the other players. Say, for example, WNBA team came to Toronto. They would pack Scotiabank Arena to see these two star players, or even one of them.
I think that would happen regardless.
Right? I think, okay, that's a fair point too. But I think there would be an incredible amount of buzz because I do think that they're two very, very special athletes and special people.
I got to go to the glasses on this one, if you don't mind here. Right? And here, the Caitlin Clark conversation has been hot. But then I look at, and everyone's saying she's the best women's basketball player at this level of all time. I would argue that Paige Beckers is actually a better basketball player all around than she is. How about Brianna Stewart, UConn? Played for 4 years, won 4 NCAA titles, at 4 MVP awards on top of that, and helped her team or led her team to a 151-5 record at UConn. How about Maya Moore, right? Best player, again, on UConn. Led her team to the Final Four in her rookie year. Won back-to-back, was the best player on those two teams that won back-to-back. And then lost in the Final Four in her senior year, right? And then went on to, do some wonderful things in the WNBA. But I'm not quite sure if those players move the needle in the WNBA. It seems the WNBA is a popular sport, but I just don't know I just don't know if I'm going to run to the TV and watch Caitlin Clark any more than I've watched those women that I just talked about. I really don't know. There are so many other sports right now that we're in competition with right now. And the fact that there's not a team here in Toronto.
I think now, though, you're in a point, and I know a lot of the players you talked about were recent, and Brianna Stewart, I think, kind of falls victim to the part of the UConn machine, even though she was the star of that machine. It's almost like the coach transcends that program, Gino Auriemma. I think now women's sports at the professional level is getting such a boost. You see it with the PWHL, and the WNBA now has competition with women's sports. It's not just all of the other sports. It's with women's sports. So they realize that they've got to create stars. They've got to raise their game. They've got to keep their audience share. They've got to keep their attendance up. And they've got to keep being competitive. And right now, catch lightning in a bottle with how much people are taking a look at women's sports. And don't say anything to those naysayers of, nobody's going to watch women's sports. Those people are idiots, in my opinion. I know that from calling high-level women's sports at the university level here in Canada, how good the product is, and if you put people in the stands, how much better it makes the overall atmosphere. So I just truly believe if it's going to happen, it's going to happen in the next 3 or 4 years with the 4 players that you talked about, before, with Angel Weiss and with Caitlin Clark and with Juju and with the other player that you
Paige
talked
Becker.
about. Maybe that's the problem here, that I'm trying to keep these names on the tip of my tongue, and I keep not having them on the tip of my tongue. But if it's ever going to be, it's going to be now and in this time period.
Okay, now according to the likes of Rory McIlroy, the PGA and the LIV Golf split, it's just not sustainable for the sport. Do you believe this to be true?
Yes, I do. And whenever you split, like athletes go in one direction and they're elite level, and athletes go in another level, yes, there's going to be the same number of golfers, but now the talent is a little bit more watered down, and you don't get those matchups that you want on your everyday run-of-the-mill PGA or LIV golf event. When they come together for the majors, well, is anybody talking about the on-golf course rivalry? No, they're all talking about, well, whether or not it's going to be sustainable. And I just feel that, with the majors, it's great to have all these players, but week to week, you need to be driving those tournaments towards the majors. And it's just not happening. And I think LIV, for all of the money that they've spent and all of the golfers that have become very, very wealthy, I was reading something that said that their TV ratings just aren't there right now. And I think that there's been a dip in the PGA ratings as well. So it's not competition creating something better like capitalism should. It's competition actually diminishing both sides. And when you come together for the Masters, and people aren't as focused on the Masters, they're focused on the fact that these guys are coming together because they're playing on completely different tours. I don't think it's sustainable for the long-term future. Financially, sure, it's sustainable. But really, in terms of the quality of golf, the television audience, that week-to-week golf fan, I do think there's a certain amount of golf that you can watch per week. And if you have to make a choice, I don't think you're sitting there and watching both at the same time or recording one and watching it later, because you know how rounds of golf are, Bubba. You can sit in front of the TV for 6 hours. Now you're adding more hours for fans to watch.
Yeah.
It's going to be very, very difficult. And LIV right now, it doesn't have the name recognition that the PGA Tour has, and it has that. Again, the idea, they call it sport washing a little bit, right? With the Saudi Arabian money that is being filtered to the players. Again, I'm all for athletes getting what they want if they excel at their field and getting paid for it. But there's still that PR thing with LIV as well. So I 1,000% agree with the golfers, led by Rory McIlroy and some of the other ones who are saying that, yeah, it's just not sustainable. And they're a long way away from what it appears to coming to some sort of agreement, because I know that was broached. It's not going to be easy to come together.
Golf is dying.
You think?
It's dying right now, and I enjoy LIV actually a little bit, right? Because I look at the leaderboards on a tournament basis, and on a regular tournament basis, and with the exception of Scottie Scheffler, who recently won the Players' Championship, when I look at the PGA, and it was great to see our guy here from Dundas, Mackenzie Hughes, do very, very well the last couple of tournaments out there. I look at this leaderboard, and I don't even know who these guys are.
Yeah.
Now, there are real hardcore golf fans, right? But they don't need to chase a hardcore golf fan. They need to chase me, you, and several others to watch on a regular basis. And this is why I say the PGA, especially, is dying, right? There's trouble here. Now, LIV, it can carry on for its existence because the money is endless. The Saudi money is endless. So, they're not even on here on CHCH any longer after 2 seasons. They're on a computer somewhere. And we're still not, even though watching sports on the computer it's rising in popularity, it's still not the thing.
Not there yet.
It's not there yet. No. You got to be on TV somewhere. So LIV, because they have the bottomless pit of money, they can just keep doing what they're doing and keep pulling players from the PGA. But look at arguably the best player in the world right now, Jon Rahm, is there. Mm-hmm. You could say Scottie Scheffler, but the thing was, when he won the Players' Championship a couple weeks back, my first thought was, is he the Players' Champion?
It's a watered-down field, right?
Yeah, it's a field that lot that I don't know. Mm-hmm. Because the other guys, I'd like to see Jon Rahm in competition. And let's throw in another name, too. No Tiger Woods.
Nope.
We're now experiencing this. Like, it's obvious. Tiger's done. And it's great when he shows up every once in a while, and he'll find a way somehow to compete in the Masters. And all eyes will be on Eldrick once again. What is he, 48, 49 years old, broken down, balding. Like, it's Tiger. I can't believe I'm saying this, but he's finished. Or he'll pull out after 2 days because his back hurts. The guy's put together by doctors. It was amazing for what we saw for the better part of 2 decades, but it's done. And that means the PGA, done.
Well, you hit on something there, right? Tiger Woods was that star that overshadowed everybody. He was the star beyond golf, and it's hard to recreate that, but you're right. Golf has not even come close to being able to recreate that. Talented players, great players, but they just didn't have the same cachet as Tiger Woods, who is, well, I hate to say, Tiger Woods is heading into his, Arnold Palmer, ceremonial tee-off, play a couple rounds at the Masters. Jack Nicklaus,
show up,
ceremonial tee-off, shake some hands and all that. He's a lot closer to that than people think, and I know there are people who are still holding out hope that there's one more run, one more tournament
that
for
could
him.
be me.
Yeah.
That's me. I'm dying for it. But it's not happening.
Yeah, Father Time doesn't surrender to anybody.
It's beat up. He's beat up.
Yep.
It's beat up. Everything changed after Elin. After the golf club and the Escalade.
Square-Off takes a dark turn.
Everything started to go weird after that.
Yep.
But then there was that Masters win a couple of years ago, right? There was a Players' Championship win. Like this is amazing. But you look at his age and the ankle, the knee, the back. I got to get my feels.
That car accident was devastating.
Right? Oh my goodness! You almost lost a leg or a foot, or the fact that he's even competing. Like, I'm waiting now for the day that maybe his son might end up being better than him at this point now, right?
So much like him when he plays and hits the ball, doesn't he?
Well, wouldn't you copy him if you were? Hey,
many have tried.
You're a dad. I'm not, right? But I have to believe if I was a dad, I'd be like, son, do it this way.
Yeah,
it works.
Fair point.
I tell you, Steve, this is great talking sports with you, especially on a variety of subjects, and I hope you enjoyed the Square-Off.
Hey, you know what? I got a chance to fulfill exactly what I wanted and get some opinions and hang out and talk with you. It's fantastic. Love my time here as I did the first time. It was just great.
Well, I think this is probably a good time for you right now because it's off-season a little bit right now.
A little earlier than I intended with the Ice Dogs. But yes, it is off-season. Even my daughter's hockey season is transitioning a little bit into next year, and then they'll have a nice break too. So I do have a lot of free time on my hands, a lot more than usual.
Thanks for joining us, bud.
Thank you.
Join us again?
Absolutely. 1,000%.
Look forward to it. Folks, that's your Sportsline podcast for the day. And as you've just seen and heard, we love talking sports with passion. And if you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote the Sportsline podcast, we do want to hear from you. Please hit up that thumbs up button, the like button, the subscribe button. It's a lot of buttons, but press it for us, please. And if you do have something to say, please comment. For the wonderful people that make the Sportsline podcast possible, we thank you so very much, and we'll see you tomorrow.